Scorsese's classic gave us a raw glimpse into the everyday world of the mob like never before. The film also launched several careers and has managed to endure.
In 1990, a film was released that didn't just entertain audiences. It completely changed the way people saw gangster movies forever. That film was Goodfellas, a raw, intense, and brutally honest look into the hidden world of organized crime. From the very first moment, Goodfellas makes one thing clear. This is not a glamorous story. There are no heroes here, no clean victories, just a chaotic, dangerous life where power comes at a heavy cost and loyalty can disappear in an instant. At the heart of it all is Henry Hill, a young boy growing up in Brooklyn, watching gangsters from his neighborhood with admiration. To him, they weren't criminals, they were legends. They had money, respect, influence, and most importantly, freedom. Freedom from rules, from authority, from ordinary life. And that's what Henry wanted. So at a very young age, he begins working for Paulie Cicero's crew. At first, it's simple tasks, running errands, delivering packages, watching and learning. But in the world of the Mafia, nothing stays small for long. Very quickly, Henry finds himself surrounded by serious criminals, dangerous men who live by their own code. Among them are two figures who will shape his entire life: Jimmy Conway and Tommy DeVito. Jimmy is calm, intelligent, always thinking ahead. He rarely raises his voice, but his decisions are final and often deadly. Tommy, on the other hand, is the complete opposite: loud, unpredictable, explosive. A man who can go from joking to killing in a matter of seconds. Together, they form a powerful and dangerous trio. As time passes, Henry becomes fully immersed in this lifestyle. Nights are spent in nightclubs, where money flows endlessly, where connections are made, and where power is visible in every corner. He lives a life most people only dream about: fast cars, expensive suits, beautiful women. Eventually, Henry meets Karen. At first, she's uncomfortable with his lifestyle. She sees the danger, the violence, the unpredictability. But slowly, like many others, she becomes attracted to the power and security that comes with it. And just like that, she's pulled into the same world. But beneath all the luxury and excitement lies something much darker. Because in the Mafia, respect is everything, and disrespect can be fatal. One of the most important turning points in the story comes with the murder of Billy Batts, a made man connected to a powerful crime family. What begins as a simple insult quickly turns into something much worse. Tommy, unable to control his temper, attacks Billy in a fit of rage. What follows is a brutal beating that crosses a line that should never be crossed. Killing a made man is not just dangerous, it's a death sentence. And yet, they do it anyway. But here's something most people don't realize. Even this moment, as shocking as it is, was actually toned down in the final film. In the original version, the violence in Goodfellas was far more graphic. The opening scene alone was enough to make audiences uncomfortable. A man trapped in a car trunk, barely alive, begging for mercy, and Tommy stabbing him again and again. Originally, this scene showed 7 full stabs on screen. When it was shown to test audiences, the reaction was immediate. People were disturbed. Some felt sick. Others simply got up and walked out. For director Martin Scorsese, this was a huge problem. He didn't want to remove the brutality completely, because that was the reality of the story. But he also knew that if audiences couldn't sit through the film, the message would be lost. So he made a smart decision. Instead of showing everything, he reduced the number of visible stabs to 3 and let the sound effects and imagination do the rest. And somehow, that made the scene even more powerful. Because fear doesn't always come from what we see. Sometimes, it comes from what we imagine. As the story continues, Henry rises higher and higher within the mob. But with success comes risk. The Lufthansa heist becomes one of the biggest robberies in American history, bringing in millions of dollars. For a brief moment, it feels like they've reached the peak of their power. But in this world, success is often the beginning of the end. Greed begins to take over. Members of the crew start spending money carelessly, buying expensive items, attracting attention. And attention is the last thing you want in organized crime. Jimmy sees the danger immediately. And one by one, people start disappearing. No warnings, no second chances, just gone. And then comes one of the most disturbing and unforgettable moments in the entire film, the death of Spider. Spider is young, inexperienced, just trying to earn a living. He's not a threat, not a rival, just a kid. But in this world, that doesn't matter. When he forgets Tommy's drink, it seems like a small mistake, something that could easily be laughed off. But Tommy doesn't laugh. Instead, he humiliates Spider, shoots him in the foot, and later, when Spider finally stands up for himself, kills him without hesitation. This scene shocked audiences. But what's even more surprising is that it almost didn't make it into the movie at all. The studio was concerned. They believed it made Tommy too unlikable, too violent, too extreme. But Scorsese had a different perspective. He didn't want Tommy to be liked. He wanted him to be real. Because the truth is, people like Tommy exist, and hiding that reality would only weaken the story. So the scene stayed, and it became one of the most powerful moments in the film. But Goodfellas isn't just about violence. It's also about contrast, the strange balance between normal life and chaos. One perfect example is the famous dinner scene at Tommy's mother's house. After committing brutal acts, the trio suddenly sits down for a calm, warm, almost peaceful meal. It feels strange, almost uncomfortable in a different way, because for a moment they seem normal. They laugh, they eat, they talk like a regular family. And that's what makes it so powerful. It reminds us that these aren't monsters from another world. They're human beings, capable of kindness and extreme violence at the same time. What makes this scene even more special is that it was mostly improvised. The reactions, the conversations, the small details, all of it feels real because it was. And although some people initially thought it slowed the movie down, it ultimately became one of the most loved scenes. As Henry's story moves forward, things begin to fall apart. Drugs enter his life, and everything changes. His judgment becomes clouded. His decisions become reckless. He starts ignoring orders, taking risks, and losing control. Paranoia takes over. He begins to fear everyone, the police, his partners, even his closest friends. And eventually his worst fears come true. He gets arrested. Now, he's trapped between two deadly choices: stay loyal and risk being killed, or betray everything and survive. In the end, Henry chooses survival. He becomes an informant, testifying against Jimmy and Paulie, leaving behind the only life he ever knew. But there's no happy ending, no victory, just a quiet, ordinary life in witness protection. No power, no excitement, no respect, just normal. And for Henry Hill, that might have been the hardest punishment of all. What makes Goodfellas even more fascinating is how much of it is based on real events, and how much was changed. Names were altered, details were adjusted. Certain events were exaggerated to make the story more engaging. For example, Henry and Tommy's friendship was modified. In reality, they weren't the same age, and their relationship developed differently. Henry's first arrest was also dramatized for film. And then there's an entire chapter of his life that was completely left out: his time in the Army. At just 17 years old, Henry joined the military, not out of duty, but to avoid attention from law enforcement. Even there, he continued his illegal activities, running small scams and making money on the side. Eventually, he was caught and punished. But this part of his life never made it into the film. Why? Because it didn't fit the pace. It didn't serve the main story. And sometimes in filmmaking, what you leave out is just as important as what you include. Finally, we come to one of the most iconic scenes in cinematic history: the funny how moment. What starts as a simple joke quickly turns into a tense, uncomfortable confrontation. Tommy suddenly demands to know what Henry means by calling him funny. The room goes silent. The tension builds. And for a moment, it feels like violence is inevitable. What makes this scene even more incredible is that it was inspired by a real-life experience from Joe Pesci. And much of it was improvised, making the reactions feel completely genuine. This is what makes Goodfellas so special. It doesn't feel like a movie. It feels real. Every moment, every decision, every scene. carefully crafted to pull the audience deeper into a world that is both fascinating and terrifying. And that's why, even decades later, Goodfellas is still considered one of the greatest films ever made, not because it glorifies crime, but because it exposes it. So now the question is, would the film have been even more powerful if it kept all its original brutal scenes? Or did those changes turn it into the masterpiece we know today? Let us know your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more untold stories from the world of cinema.